Leviticus chapter 14, verses 1 to 57. I am reading from the New Revised Standard Version, the Green Bible. Verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, verse 2, this shall be the ritual for the leprous person at the time of his cleansing. He shall be brought to the priest. Verse 3. The priest shall go out of the camp, and the priest shall make an examination. If the disease is healed in the leprous person, verse 4, the priest shall command that 2 living clean birds and cedar wood and crimson yarn and hyssop be brought for the one who is to be cleansed. Verse 5, the priest shall command that one of the birds be slaughtered over fresh water in an earthen vessel. Verse 6, he shall take the living bird with the cedar wood and the crimson yarn and the hyssop and dip them and the living bird in the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. Verse 7, he shall sprinkle it 7 times upon the one who is to be cleansed of the leprous disease. Then he shall pronounce him clean, and he shall let the living bird go into the open field. Verse 8, the one who is to be cleansed shall wash his clothes and shave off all his hair and bath himself in water, and he shall be clean. After that, he shall come into the camp, but shall live outside his tent 7 days. Verse 9, on the 7th day, he shall shave all his hair of head, beard, eyebrows. He shall shave all his hair. Then he shall wash his clothes and bath his body in water, and he shall be clean. Verse 10, on the 8th day, he shall take 2 male lambs without blemish, and 1 ewe lamb in its first year without blemish, and a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of choice flour mixed with oil, and 1 lug of oil. Verse 11, the priest who cleanses shall sit the person to be cleansed along with these things before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Verse 12, the priest shall take 1 of the lambs and offer it as a guilt offering along with the lug of oil, and raise them as an elevation offering before the Lord. Verse 13, he shall slaughter the lamb in the place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered in the holy place, for the guilt offering, like the sin offering, belongs to the priest. It is most holy. Verse 14, the priest shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. Verse 15, the priest shall take some of the lug of oil and pour it into the palm of his left hand. Verse 16, and dip his right finger in the oil that is in the left hand, and sprinkle some oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. Verse 17, some of the oil that remain in his hand, the priest shall put on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot, on the top of the blood of the guilt offering. Verse 18, the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand, he shall put on the head of one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall make atonement on his behalf before the Lord. Verse 19, the priest shall offer the sin offering to make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. Afterward, he shall slaughter the burnt offering. Verse 20, and the priest shall offer the burnt offering and the grain offering on the altar. Thus the priest shall make atonement on his behalf, and he shall be clean. Verse 21, but if he is poor and cannot afford so much, he shall take 1 male lamb for a guilt offering to be elevated to make atonement on his behalf, and 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and a lug of oil. Verse 22, also 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, such as he can afford, 1 for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. Verse 23, on the 8th day he shall bring them for his cleansing to the priest, to the entrance of the tent of meeting before the Lord. Verse 24, and the priest shall take the lamb of the guilt offering and the lug of oil, and the priest shall raise them as an elevation offering before the Lord. Verse 25, the priest shall slaughter the lamb of the guilt offering, and shall take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand, and on the big toe of the right foot. Verse 26, the priest shall pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand. Verse 27, and shall sprinkle with his right finger some of the oil that is in his left hand 7 times before the Lord. Verse 28, the priest shall put some of the oil that is in his hand on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, and on the thumb of the right hand and the big toe of the right foot, where the blood of the guilt offering was placed. Verse 29, the rest of the oil that is in the priest's hand he shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement on his behalf before the Lord. Verse 30, and he shall offer of the turtle doves or pigeons such as he can afford. Verse 31, one for sin offering and the other for burnt offering, along with a grain offering, and the priest shall make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one being cleansed. Verse 32, this is the ritual for the one who has leprous disease, who cannot afford the offering for his cleansing. Verse 33, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, verse 34, when you come into the land of Canaan, which I gave you for a possession, I put a leprous disease in a house in the land of your possession. Verse 35, the owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, saying, there seems to me to be some sort of disease in my house. Verse 36, the priest shall command that they empty the house before the priest goes to examine the disease, or all that is in the house will become unclean. And afterward, the priest shall go in to inspect the house. Verse 37, he shall examine the disease if the disease is in the walls of the house with greenish or reddish spots, and if it appears to be deeper than the surface. Verse 38, the priest shall go outside to the door of the house and shut up the house 7 days. Verse 39, the priest shall come again on the 7th day and make an inspection if the disease has spread in the walls of the house. Verse 40, the priest shall command that the stones in which the disease appears be taken out and thrown into an unclean place outside the house. Verse 41, he shall have the inside of the house scraped thoroughly, and the plaster that is scraped off shall be dumped in an unclean place outside the city. Verse 42, they shall take other stones and put them in the place of those stones, and take other plaster and plaster the house. Verse 43, if the disease breaks out again in the house, after he has taken out the stones and scraped the house and plastered it. Verse 44, the priest shall go and make inspection. If the disease has spread in the house, it is a spreading leprous disease in the house, it is unclean. Verse 45, he shall have the house torn down, its stones and timber and all the plaster of the house, and taken outside the city to an unclean place. Verse 46, all who enter the house while it is shut up shall be unclean until evening. Verse 47, and all who keep in the house shall wash their clothes, and all who eat in the house shall wash their clothes. Verse 48, if the priest comes and makes an inspection, and the disease has not spread in the house after the house was plastered, and the priest shall pronounce the house clean, the disease is healed. Verse 49, for the cleansing of the house he shall take 2 birds, cedar wood and crimson yarn and hyssop. Verse 50, and shall slaughter one of the bird over fresh water in an earthen vessel. Verse 51, and shall take the cedar wood and the hyssop and the crimson yarn along the living bird, and dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird and the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. Verse 52, thus he shall cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, and with the fresh water, and with the living bird, and with the cedar wood, and the hyssop, and the crimson yarn. Verse 53, and he shall let the living bird go out of the city into the open field, and also he shall make atonement for the house, and it shall be clean. Verse 54, this is the ritual for any leprous disease for an etch. Verse 53, for leprous disease in clothing and houses. 56, verse 56, and for a swelling or an eruption or a spot. Verse 57, to determine when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the ritual for leprous disease. I'm reading from Leviticus chapter 14, verses 1 to 57, from the New Revised Standard Version, the Green Bible.